So today we are going to practice moving from spoken language to more academic language in writing. And we're going to do this through practice with writing a variety of cause and effect sentences. This is really helpful to learn how to do because it makes our writing more interesting for readers. And then also it can translate into how you speak, making your speech sound more fluid and interesting too. So what we're going to do first is learn about using the connecting word so. So in our visual, we have just a reminder of how simple sentences look. It's just an example: the polar ice caps are melting, and then there are more floods. So there we see that there are two separate sentences, but they are somehow connected, right? There's one that affects the other.
Yeah.
So down below, the way we could connect those two and make them one sentence would be putting a comma between the first sentence and the second sentence, and then so after the comma. So could you read the sentence for me in total, like all of it? Yeah.
The polar ice caps are melting, so there are more floods.
Yeah, perfect. And can you point out to me which one is the cause and which one is the effect?
I think the polar ice caps are melting is the cause, because it's causing there to be more floods. So then the effect is there are more floods.
Exactly. So now we're going to practice this a little bit with some more environmental problems that are going on. So here we have in our graphic organizer the cause side and the effect side. So these sentences will be the causes, and these will be the effects of those causes. So what I want you to do is read out loud these two sentences separately.
This one.
And then where you think the comma and then the so goes to connect the two thoughts.
Okay. So humans are cutting down a lot of forests, and then many animals are becoming endangered. So you put it in between the causes, you put it in between the sentences. So it's humans are cutting down a lot of forests, so many animals are becoming endangered.
Right. Could you write between them? Yeah. And there's one thing missing here. Do you remember what I said about punctuation with commas in these sentences?
There's a comma before.
And in this kind of sentence with these connecting words, you know the word and, right? And that's like so. We use it in the same way to connect two thoughts. So with those kind of connecting words, we always put the comma before the connecting word. It's really important to remember that.
With and, you put the comma before?
With when you're writing a cause and effect sentence, you do.
Okay.
Sometimes you wouldn't with and. When it's you're saying like, I ride my bike and I play soccer. Those are kind of two separate things. It's not a cause and an effect, right? But here, if it was a cause and effect, you would put the comma before.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do the next practice sentence. Could you read these two sentences for me?
Most of our energy comes from burning fossil fuels. And we are putting a lot of
CO2.
A lot of CO2 into the atmosphere.
So, where would you put so here to connect the two?
Most of our energy comes from burning fossil fuels. so we are putting a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere.
Perfect. So now I'm going to give you an example orally, just from me speaking, and I want you to point out which part of the sentence is the cause, and which part of the sentence is the effect. And I'm going to be using so, like we just practiced. So, ocean levels will continue to rise, so island nations will have to leave their home. So which one is the cause and which one is the effect in that sentence?
Cause, because before the so.
Mm-hmm.
Could you repeat it?
Ocean levels will continue to rise, so island nations will start to lose their homes.
So the ocean levels will continue to rise is the cause,
Mm-hmm.
and then so island peoples will lose their homes is the effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. You got it. So now we're going to move into the next way we can combine two sentences in the cause and effect structure. And that is using words called subordinators. In here, a lot of times we use the words because or since. So in these kind of sentences, we always put the subordinator, because or since, before the cause sentence. Because we're saying, because this is happening, this happens, right? And the sentence that comes after the first sentence with the subordinator is the effect. So could you read out these two sentences for me? Or this one sentence?
Because the polar ice caps are melting, there are more floods.
Mm-hmm. And do you see how here the subordinator goes before the cause sentence?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And then down here in the second sentence, it still has all the same ideas, but the two sentences are switched in their order. So because can go in the middle of the sentence, the subordinator. It's still in front of the cause part, but it's just in a different place in the sentence. So could you read out this one for me?
So there are more floods because the polar ice caps are melting.
Yeah,
Okay. So
exactly.
the because is always before the cause,
Mm-hmm.
and always after the effect. But it doesn't matter if you can switch the two clauses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And then there's also a comma here. How do I know?
Oh yeah, thank you for reminding me. Yeah, that's actually a really important part. So when you're saying the cause first in the sentence, and that means the subordinator is first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Starting the sentence with a subordinator because the polar ice caps are melting, you have to put a comma after that clause before the next one. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Why is the comma there, though? Just because?
Because the subordinator is in the first part of the sentence. Because
Okay.
the polar ice caps are melting, it makes it dependent on the next part of the sentence, right? And there's a natural break between them, natural pause that happens. Whereas here, there are more floods because the polar ice caps are melting. You don't really hear a break between. It's just a fluid sentence.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
The way it sounds.
So now we're going to practice combining sentences with using because or since, the words we just went over in that structure. So here we have the same sentences we just worked on here, but I want you to combine them using because or since in them. So the first one, you can use because, and then the second one, I would like you to use since. So could you read out the first two sentences separately first?
Humans are cutting down a lot of trees. Many animals are becoming endangered.
Mm-hmm.
And it always goes before the cause. So it's because humans are cutting down a lot of trees, comma, many animals are becoming endangered.
Yeah, you remember the comma. Awesome. So could you put it before there? And then would it also makes sense to put since there, right? Could you read it out if we're using since?
Since humans are cutting down a lot of trees, many animals are becoming endangered.
Yeah, great. Okay.
So they kind of mean the same thing.
Yes. So could you do the same thing with these two sentences?
Putting either one?
Yeah.
Because most of our energy comes from burning fossil fuels, we are putting a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. And then since most of our energy comes from burning fossil fuels, we are putting a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere.
Yeah. So do you remember how we were talking about how you could switch the order of the two sentences? The cause and the effect. So how would these sentences look if you did that? Put the cause clause after the effect clause.
So we start with saying this one first. Many animals are becoming endangered because humans are cutting down a lot of trees.
Yes, perfect. And here?
We are putting a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. Should I use since most of our energy comes from burning fossil fuels?
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to give you a oral sentence, and I want you to point out which one is cause and which one's effect. Okay. So, because we use so much plastic, there will be more plastic than sea life in the oceans by 2050.
So the cause is that we use more plastic because we use more plastic. And the effect is that we will have more plastic in the ocean.
Yeah. Great. That's a pretty terrible fact, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to using transitions. And this is the third way, or a third way, you can make cause and effect sentences. They're just slightly different words or phrases we use. So the word therefore and the phrase as a result are called transitions in English. And they signal sort of a change to a thought, an effect that's connected to the cause. So it's like the same ideas as up here, just like different words. And the therefore always goes before the effect. Because you're always saying, this is happening, therefore this happens. And it's like explaining how that happened, and then therefore sort of as a continuation or as a result of that, this effect happens. And then another important thing to remember with punctuation is that a comma will always go after the transition word. So, yeah. So it will always go after the word, and then with these two sentences, this type of sentence, it's a little different than the other ones in that you can have two separate sentences. So do you see how here?
Therefore.
Okay. So you can have. Would you read that one out for me? The first one.
Yeah. The polar ice caps are melting. Therefore, there are more floods. So yeah, that sounds like two sentences.
Exactly. Yeah. but it's still connected. You can see how the word sort of signals that this sentence is going to be connected to that sentence as an effect of that sentence. And then a second way we can organize this type of sentence is with a semicolon. So how a semicolon works is you put it after the cause, like in here, the period, but it means that it's one sentence. And a really easy way to do it is to have two sentences. This is just a slightly more complex way of doing it that will add variety to your writing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So then what is the difference between the semicolon and a comma?
Well, a comma, a semicolon connects two independent clauses.
Oh, okay.
And a comma, you have to have a transition word, or sorry, not a transition word, a conjunction like so, or a word.
Because.
Yeah, a word that shows you that it's dependent, not independent.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
So here the sentences are the same. We just changed it from a comma to a semicolon.
Okay.
And then therefore is not a separate sentence, but it could be a separate sentence, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like the exact same as here.
Yeah.
And
we put it into one sentence by putting a semicolon there instead of the period.
Yes. Cool. So now we're going to do our final practice with some sentences. So, could you read out these two sentences for me?
The ice caps are melting and ocean levels are rising.
Great. So, where would you put the transition word? Therefore, as a result, whichever one.
As a result. So the ice caps are melting, therefore ocean levels are rising.
And why do you put the therefore?
Did I write that?
Yeah, put it down.
Spell that right?
An E after that. And then, do you remember what I said about punctuation? After the transition word?
Oh, yeah, there's a comma after therefore, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and the therefore always goes before the effect. Exactly. So, let's do a little more practice. Could you read these two for me?
Humans are cutting down a lot of trees. Many species are becoming endangered. So, humans are cutting down a lot of trees. Therefore, many species are becoming endangered. With the comma, therefore, many.
Awesome.
Same thing here.
Same thing here, except this time I want you to practice using the semicolon. So first, just read out the two sentences and then figure out how to do it.
Okay. Most of our energy comes from burning fossil fuels. We are putting a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. So most of our energy comes from burning fossil fuels. And then you put therefore. But with do you still have the comma after therefore? Okay, so you have the comma. And then you also, before that, like after the cause, right? You put semicolon?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Cool. So now we're going to just do a little bit of practice with another sentence. And this time I want you to combine the two sentences I give you and make 3 new sentences using the words we just learned. So, and then because or since, and and then therefore as a result.
Okay.
And I want you to make 3 sentences in 3 different ways using the words we just learned. Okay, so could you read out the 2 sentences for me?
Right here.
Mm-hmm.
Consumers are often buying new products. They throw away products that are still good.
Mm-hmm. So the first sentence would be with so.
Oh, the first sentence was so.
Mm-hmm. First, identify the cause and the effect. That's always a good place to start.
Okay, the cause is the consumers are often buying new products, and then that affects. They throw away products that are still good. That's the effect. So, and then, do I use the same sentence but using because now? Okay. Because consumers are often buying new products.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, therefore, or as a result.
Consumers are often buying new products. Therefore, oh yeah, with the semicolon. Therefore, they throw away products that are still good.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, oh, the comma.
Yes. Awesome. You remembered.
It's confusing. But yeah.
Great job, Maddie. You
Thank
are
you.
a quick learner. Yeah. You did well.